What is going on, Tenna crew, and welcome to my first job guide for Final Fantasy Origin Stranger of Paradise. This game has me so hyped that I'm doing job guides from the demo. So let's get right into it with the first set of jobs that you get access to in the demo, which is the Swordsman, which later evolves into the Warrior. I will explain how that works here later, but first and foremost, let's get into the job itself. The Warrior, or the Swordsman, starts off with the Greatsword. It's the default class for Jack starting out, and it uses the Greatsword weapon as its thing. From the get-go, pretty standard 3-hit combo. You can also hit R2 to do spin to win moves, and you can just hold this as long as you have mana. It will just keep going and going and then going and going and then going and going. You can also use the Greatsword for other than the standard 3-hit combo.
Come on, follow me.
It also has access to a charged R1 that gives you hyper armor and does insane amounts of health damage to an enemy. While you're charging that, you are not going to be as easily staggered. Once the attack starts going through, it can charge up to 3 times, and boy, is it devastating. So that is the default setup. Let me run up here and get some mana real quick. It also starts off with a jump move. So if you hit R1 and then R2, you do kind of a slam with your weapon. This attack is good for doing damage, and it will send enemies flying back, so that if you're trying to get posture damage off and you have an enemy near a wall, you can send them flying into the wall for that little bit of extra posture damage, as I will show you right here. Except this Gobo does not want to get flung. There we go. Easy peasy. So the Swordsman class is your standard class starting off for Jack. Uses the Greatsword. The Greatsword is very good for wide sweeping attacks, and I feel like both of these classes are better used for clearing out rubes of mobs. I don't feel like they specialize very well in big single target threats or bosses. I feel like they are very much the mob class of the game. So going into the Swordsman class in depth, we go into the skill tree. The skill tree is laid out with a bunch of stat upgrades, mostly strength and defense based, but it also unlocks more moves for your Greatsword. So first thing you get is the Onslaught move, followed up by Reinforce, which is a buff that you can add. You also get access to Harbinger, which is R1, 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 R2. And then over on the left, kind of in an offshoot, you get R1, R1, R2 with the Piercing Thrust. Very good for breaking enemies. But going through these stats, I will show you those abilities here in a minute. We have strength upgrades. We have health upgrades. I'm assuming stamina is equal to health in this game because it has the heart up. I'm not 100% sold on that. That could change in the future. You have decreased break damage, which is your posture gauge, so you'll take less posture damage. Over on this side, you have decreased damage overall, 10%. So this is very much if you want to get in and be tanky, this will be the class that you want to kind of specialize in. This will be the job that gets that job done as far as being in enemy faces and not worrying as much about the abuse that you'll be taking back. Partner this with the Reinforce skill, which makes it so that you're basically unstaggerable at this point. It is very, very good at staying in faces, getting the job done, not getting knocked down, anything like that. You got more stamina down here, more strength down here, and then lastly, it takes you to the Warrior class. We will get to Warrior here in a second. I want to show you guys what the other moves get you. So let's take Raging Slash off, go to Onslaught. And let me do a little move showcase for the ones of the skill tree. So first one is Onslaught, R1, R2. There's a little spin with a uppercut. There's a lot of travel distance in that. So if you have an enemy that maybe backs up after you hit them initially, that could be a good gap closer ability to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. It only costs 100 mana as well. Each one of those bars down low equals 100 mana. So let me kind of show you. Boop. And the spin part of it actually does do damage, so keep that in mind. Next, you have the R1, R1, R2, which is your piercing thrust. This one does insane amounts of posture damage. It's not very good damage-wise, like straight-up health bar damage-wise, but it does a significant amount of posture damage, which I think is going to be its big boon. If you're wanting to posture break something, you got something about halfway posture broke, this will get you that additional little oomph there. And then lastly, you have the R1, 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 R2, which is Harbinger, which is a big uppercut followed up by a slam. So it's like the initial move that you had, Rage Blade, but it also has that uppercut factor onto it. This one costs 200 mana, so it's a little bit pricey. It is also only usable right at the end of your combo. 1, 2, 3, uppercut, and then slam. Sends a big knockback going. Very, very good ability. High posture damage and high health damage as well. Very solid if you are willing to burn off, well, not burn, but use up 2 mana bars to get that effect done. There are all the other abilities within the Swordsman only use 100 mana, so it's a little bit of a risk to use that. But if you've got full mana built up, then you're probably not as worried about it as what you would be if you just got knocked down and you're coming back into a fight and you're back down to base mana. You might want to build up mana before you start using that one. But as I was saying, unlocking all the way to the bottom of the Swordsman tree will unlock to you the advanced job, which is Warrior. So the cool thing about the Warrior class is, 1, you can use both great swords and halberds. 2, any of the abilities that you have gotten from the Swordsman class, you can use with your great swords, or the Javelin class. I think that's what it's called. Lancer class. Or if you're using the halberd, any of the abilities that you've gotten from the Lancer class, you can use with your warrior build. So it allows you to serve both functions within the warrior tree. And what makes the warrior tree unique? Well, that is the ability Warcry. So Warcry is a buff that you can add on. It is its signature ability, just like the Swordsman has the Spin to Win as its signature ability. This one is Warcry. You turn it on. First thing it does is it sends out an AoE that sends enemies flying. If they hit walls, they'll take posture damage. But then it also gives you a buff so that you're healing constantly over the course of the buff's duration. And there's also a buff down low, Warcry Master, that every time you soul burst something, which is when you break something's posture and turn it to crystal and explode it, it re-ups the duration of the Warcry. So you can keep Warcry going through an entire fight as long as you're consistently knocking people down and soul bursting them. Very, very good for maintaining high health. And that's what this whole tree is really about. So you got stamina over here, you got strength over here. Note that it says above me, effective in both battle sets. So what that means is no matter which set you have, you can have two jobs equipped at any time. As long as you have warrior equipped and you've gotten these buffs, they are going to affect both of the classes that you have currently equipped. So if you have Black Mage, you're not going to get a lot out of this strength, but you may get some pretty decent use out of the stamina, considering the Black Mage is very, very squishy. Going on down, so we have the Warcry Master. We also have over here where we increase the amount of break that we do to the enemies, which is their posture. We also have the buff over here, Mighty Strikes, which increases our damage both to health and to their posture. So it is very good. Basically, this combined with the Reinforce from Swordsman functions like your Lightbringer mode without actually having to burn off a mana bar. When I say burn off, I mean it gets rid of a mana bar completely, whereas using up a mana bar just like uses that magic and then you can build it up through basic attacks. Lightbringer actually burns it off, so with both of these, they both cost 100 mana. So you could, for 200 mana, get basically the same effects minus the permanent stamina burn than Lightbringer. As we go down here, we also have some agility. We have a little bit more strength, a little bit of luck over here, which I'm curious how the luck stat is going to work in this game. I'm assuming luck will increase your crit damage, which could be very good if you're using the Lance. The Lance thrives on crit damage. Could also increase drop rate. We aren't 100% sure. But then we get to these two abilities, which I think are very, very interesting and synergize very well with the war cry that the warrior comes with. So this one is Bold Offense, increases damage dealt when HP is at max, and then Bold Defense does the same thing, only with defense when HP is max. Think of them functionally as Lloyd's Sword and Shield Ring from Dark Souls. As long as you're at max HP, you are going to be hitting significantly harder, or that first hit that you take at max HP isn't really going to do anything, and it will give you more time for Warcry to top you off. That way you can kind of perpetuate, like, even if you take a little bit of damage, it's not going to take it a long time for Warcry to heal you back up, so that you can keep getting the benefits of both Bold Offense and Defense. Also, straight up physical damage increase, physical break damage increase, all damage taken reduced, and that is really it for the warrior. These abilities do not stack. It's only the straight stat upgrades that will go between the jobs that you have equipped. So keep that in mind. Just because you have this 10% increase or decrease to damage, and you also have the Swordsman's 10% decrease to damage, does not mean you're going to get 20% decrease to damage if you have both of these jobs equipped. Which kind of sachets into what you should be using with either Swordsman or Warrior. So my recommendations for job combinations would be threefold. So you can get away with having both Swordsman and Warrior equipped. You'll get the stat bonuses from both of those job trees. You are kind of double dipping into if you both are using Greatsword. That is kind of going to be an awkward thing, whereas Swordsman is locked exclusively to Greatsword. Warrior can use Lance if you wanted to use a Lance, but you didn't want to go into the Lancer or the Dragoon stuff. You don't like how they function. Warrior might be a good way of getting a use out of your Lance. Also, keep in mind, you can Warcry and then switch over to your Swordsman and take advantage of the Spin to Win if you are so inclined. Since Warrior gets rid of Spin to Win as a move, this might be a decent way of you kind of getting both of those abilities used. The next I would suggest would be switching to Warrior, because if you look at the stats above me, and I'll kind of move over to the side, Warrior is just a straight up stat increase from the Swordsman. You go from 1200 HP to 1600 HP, and then each stat down the board is gaining at least like 2 to 5 increases by switching just from Swordsman to Warrior. So the Warrior is stats-wise the better choice. The only reason I would suggest not going with Warrior would be if you like the Spin to Win, but you still want to use a Greatsword. That would be the only reason why. It's a little bit riskier of a playstyle, but it is entirely up to you. My next guess would be take either Warrior or Swordsmaster. I would suggest Warrior because the buffs in that are better used to synergize with Black Mage. Black Mage is very squishy. You can use Warcry to kind of buff yourself up. You can use the abilities that you got from the trees, which those abilities can actually be used in any of the jobs, I'm pretty sure. Yes, it is confirmed. Once you unlock the L2 abilities, you can use them in any job that you have equipped. So the Black Mage class has a lot of troubles with longevity in fights. It is very good at doing big amounts of damage from far away, but it does struggle with those health returns. Having Warrior on top, being able to Warcry and then go into Black Mage can kind of help top you off, keep you going as you are doing that. And it also gives you the ability to do a ranged spell, switch over to Warrior, and then bust it out in melee once whatever spell you have sent out is doing its job. Lastly, and this is probably the least one I would recommend, would be going with Dragoon or Lancer and your Warrior. You're kind of dipping into two different realms that are competing with each other, and there's not a lot of stat bonuses that will help you between the two. But if you don't want to use, say, if you want to have access to the Lance, but you don't want to have the Lance on your Warrior, that would be the only recommendation that I would have for having Warrior and Lancer or Dragoon added on. Last thing I want to mention before we close this video out is gear. So as you can see, there is job affinity for a lot of gear, as well as basic stat increases going forward with gear. Let's go ahead and slam on this great sword because it has the best for Warrior. But as you can see, the Shadow set is going to be most likely the best set that you can get for buffing either the Warrior or the Swordsmaster class. Those are the types of drops that you're going to be wanting. They have the most chance of getting you job affinity. And don't worry about the head slot being empty here. The Shadow Cloak has both a chest piece and a helmet piece built in. So that's why the job affinity is a little bit higher, because it's functioning for two different set pieces. But if you're looking for Warrior or Swordsman gear, Shadow gear is what you're going to be looking for anytime you get a new Shadow drop. Definitely check it out to make sure that it is not better than what you are currently using. But with that being said, that's pretty well all I have to say about the Warrior. Definitely a powerhouse as far as mobs go. Struggles a little bit in hard single target stuff that's not going to stagger very easy. It doesn't do as much upfront damage as, say, the Lance does. So you're going to be chipping down a lot slower than what you would be with alternate weapons. But still a very, very good class, very solid class. And honestly, through mobs, you will be wrecking through things and not even like paying attention to your health. It's amount of longevity that you have, the amount of heals that you have, the defensive buffs that you have. It is very, very good for minor enemies, just basically bouncing off of you. So if you found this guide helpful or enjoyable, please don't forget to like the video. Also, check out the other videos I have on the channel. I have a lot of good content coming up for Stranger of Paradise, as well as Dark Souls content and more going forward. Also, maybe check out the Twitch channel. We stream Souls-likes nightly, 10:30 Eastern time, channel of the same name, twitch.tv/Billy_the_Skwid. Much love, guys. Thank you very much for watching the guide. Bye-bye.